Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
At the circus, we once hired a clown who performed under the name Malingo. I think we all knew right from the start that there was something wrong with Malingo. And if you're considered odd amongst our ragged crew, there is something seriously wrong. He stank, not only from the booze, which seemed to be his only intake of nutrients whatsoever, but of something sickly sweet, like a carcass left in the summer sun. And he moved rather clumsy, and not clown-funny clumsy, but rigid, both on and off the stage. From day one he kept to himself, and no one really cared to befriend him anyway. One night, he seemed more off than usual. He was mimicking the acrobats in one of his numbers. The idea was that he would use the trampoline and do a couple of flicks in the air, and then crash land. During the practice sessions, he had always gotten up right after the crash, since that was part of the act. But this night, in front of the audience, he didn't get up. I was the first one to reach him, since I'm always there during the clown's act. If the stench didn't tell me something was wrong, the huge gaping hole in his stomach did. It was like he had just burst open. Thankfully, I managed to get the clowns to play ambulance and carry him out before the audience realized it wasn't part of the show. I also managed to hide his wound with the help of a tablecloth we had on stage. We have a doctor in our troupe, and after examining Malingo, he said that the clown had been dead for weeks. That last trick had been too much for his decomposing body, and he had simply burst. None of us understand how this can be, but he hid his condition, if one can call it that, under a mist of booze and thick layers of makeup.
Speaking of terrifying clowns, the Hopi tribe of the American Southwest performs elaborate ritual dances throughout the year, with dancers dressing as gods and spirits known as Katsinas. There is a whole category of Katsina dancers known as the clowns. They are painted with black and white striping patterns. The Hopi Clowns entertain, and also keep the other dancers and participants awake with their whips, flails, and their shocking antics during the ceremonies, which can go for days without breaks or sleep. What is less well known is that Hopi Clowns also act as bouncers, keeping people from disrupting the ceremonies, and also carry the responsibility of punishing or executing those who break religious taboo. So tourists and academics who try to sneak into the private ceremonies with cameras and shit find themselves dragged out into the night by clown dancers who smash their AV equipment and give them a boot party. If you do something to really mess up a ceremony, you get dragged out into the night and nobody ever finds you. Res law enforcement turns a blind eye to it.
This reawakened the memory of a spooky childhood clown happening to me. Unlike a lot of kids, I really liked clowns, even the scary ones. Because of this, when I was about 9, my mom and dad hired a clown for my birthday party. When the party came, the clown came. His name was something like Polka Pete or something else. My memory is foggy because I was 9 at the time. I noticed immediately he was really tall. Again, I was a kid at the time, but even according to my dad, he was giant. My dad's 6'4" for reference, and works in construction. And Polka Pete was a whole head taller than him. Pete moved so weirdly, again even my parents remember it. It was like his arms and legs had additional knees and elbows, and his face was so uncanny, even to a kid like me who loved clowns, he was uncanny. I didn't want to be around Pete, and my parents didn't want him around. My dad told him to his face to leave, and offered to pay him a bonus up front if he just left. Pete froze up at this, breathing heavily in my dad's face. My dad said it took him all the willpower in his body not to throw up at that moment because Pete's breath was rancid. And then a few moments later, a car covered in polka dots pulled up to the house. And an actual clown stepped out. Polka Pete suddenly stood up straight, getting this 1,000-yard stare in his eyes before sprinting off really unnaturally. The actual clown was confused about why there was someone else there, and we all realized rather quickly that Polka Pete never showed up in a car. It seemed like he just materialized at the front door. Pick related, what Polka Pete kinda looked like, although his suit had polka dots and his face was more like an uncanny robot.
Me, 4 to 5 years old. Wasn't born mentally well, took a bit of therapy to fix. My older sister is having a classic birthday party. Cake, balloons, tables set up, and kids we never met before. I'm standing near the alley next to my house. At the end of the alley is a gate. I hear knocking at the gate. I walk over and ask hi. No response, but the knocking continues like I'm not even there. Hi, still knocking. I decided to open the gate a little bit, being the innocent kid I was. As soon as the gate opens slightly, a clown slams the gate open, knocking me on my back. The clown hops and arches over me. He just laughs in my face, hysterically, looking me in the eyes the whole time. The clown's hands are in my face and are waving wildly. Scared me so much I just passed out. I just wasn't mentally prepared. When I woke up a few minutes later, my ma checked on me and offered me to go out and still have fun. Little bit shaky and wanting to have a good time and forget about it, I went back out into the party. Clown is still there, and the clown spots me instantly. Starts to walk over to me, freaking me out. Clown just wanted to apologize and genuinely felt bad. I'm hyperventilating, shaking. I just try to close my eyes and pretend it's not there, causing a bit of a scene. I kind of feel embarrassed today. They had to send the clown away. Time went on, I've recovered. Clowns are still on the iffy side for me. Pretty much my phobia of clowns. Hope this counts as a decent story.
The first sightings of a creepy clown were a viral stunt for a low-budget killer clown movie that was likely an IT ripoff. But those sightings only got local coverage and didn't go viral. Probably they were not related to the flap, other than being cited as the initial event in many reports. The sightings that went viral started in a South Carolina neighborhood, when some children who were warned not to play in the woods reported seeing creepy clowns lurking there. These reports made more of an impression, got onto the news services, and blew up on social media. Very quickly, people were reporting seeing creepy clowns all over the place. It quickly went national, then international. Most cases were reported by kids or parents worried about their kids after seeing reports of the clowns. In the vast majority of these cases, no clowns were ever confirmed, and no evidence of clowns was found. No cell phone pics, for example. As it went on, a few morons were inspired to dress up as creepy clowns as a hoax, and a few were chased and attacked for their troubles. It was also a bad time for people who actually made a living as clowns, who had to worry about being mistaken for evil lurking dangerous clowns when, for example, driving to a birthday party where they had been hired to entertain. So in later cases there were sometimes actually clowns involved, but the explanation was pretty mundane. As happens with mass hysteria flaps, it eventually died down.
Not first-hand experience, but a story coming in. Be grandpa contractor for different companies in the 30s in Indiana. A circus hires him to do some repairs for the land. One night as he was working, came across a tent for the staff. Look inside and sees a man trying to cut his wrist. Grandpa stops the guy and talks to him. Guy was a clown but was depressed. Grandpa offers him to work for him and says that he will talk to the clown's manager. Asks the clown's name. William. Grandpa goes to the manager and talks to him. Tries to convince him that William can go with Grandpa. Manager looks at Grandpa in disbelief and asks if he's joking. Grandpa gets offended and tells him the location and the course of events. Manager looks disturbed and asks Grandpa to take him to the location. When they got to the location, the tent was missing. There was a storage tent there instead. Manager told Grandpa that it has happened to some people before. Manager said that William was a clown about a decade ago who offed himself. William was an alcoholic and got affected by the prohibition. He was also taunted a lot by his co-workers. Grandpa quits the job. Now here's the weird part. William haunted Grandpa in his nightmares for the rest of his life. Found dead in the same spot as the clown. Same method.
I have a stepdad who works in the police and is a veteran of the Falklands War. He's seen a fair few spooky things in his lifetime as an officer. First year on the job. First incident involving a casualty. Self-termination. A tourist from Germany. Girlfriend broke up with him and admitted to an affair over the phone. Detours to a bunch of cliffs with a couple of nearby woodlands with a paint set. Made this sort of altar thing out of sticks, logs, and other crap he could find and wrote out his self-termination note detailing his reasons and feelings and shit in German. Painted his face like traditional clown style. None of that insane clown posse juggalo shit. Paints his tongue black while he's at it and takes all his clothes off. Brought this really bland mask and painted it to look like a clown face, black tongue and all. Put on a mask, climbed a nearby tree and hung himself. Wasn't found until several days after the incident. Stepdad and company arrive at the scene and cut down the naked clown face. Stepdad removes clown mask, looks down and sees another clown face looking back up at him all fish-eyed. Take body away and take his possessions into custody to determine reasoning. Translator goes through phone texts and easily deciphers termination note. Not very different from the standard self-termination norm, but Stepdad always wondered why Clownface went through all that effort, apparently making the best-looking improvised altar he'd seen.
Be me, sophomore in college. This was around the time the killer clown craze was popular. I was hanging with my stoner friends. We were sitting on our buddy's porch hitting a hookah. It was around 2 or 3 in the morning when we heard an ice cream truck song playing about a mile away. Later, I found out it was most likely some frat boy trolling our town. However, a week later, it was Halloween on campus and we were dicking around. Our pack leader, the guy whose porch we crashed on, used the holiday as an excuse to tote around a baseball bat like some gangster. Kinda glad he did, because we were heading back to one of our rooms when we saw a guy dressed up as a killer clown, holding a butcher knife. The mad lad, who looks like Captain Lou, began petting his bat and stared down the clown, which scared the shit out of the clown and he ran off. Nothing much was thought about that until 2020. I was recording a rap video for some dude I had classes with. The music sucked, but it gave me a chance to produce something right before the pandemic started. He said I should record shots of this bike trail in town that apparently had occult stuff going on. Of course, I was skeptical, but I listened anyway. He said there was this cult on campus that has been sacrificing cats since the 80s. For some reason, the killer clown stuff had something to do with the cult. Keep in mind, I never told him about the clown encounter. He also said if you look into the cult, people around campus will try and silence you. I recorded some shots of the bike trail. No sacrifices that day.
I'm not going to go into great detail with the story, but I bought a creepy porcelain clown at Goodwill about 4 months ago and actually joked about it being haunted when I found it sitting there on top of all these toys. This thing is from the 70s. It was just so weird I had to have it. I've had around a dozen nightmares about clowns since I've owned him. Just to get this out there, 0 nightmares about clowns in my entire life up until I never really found them scary. Creepy at times, yeah, but I really didn't have a fear of them. I also had one dream about being in the circus, and I was in the ring with a lion tamer, and he just randomly turned on me and started hitting me with a whip, and was laughing about it as I ran in circles, and everyone in the crowd laughed too. It was like I was in the olden days or something. Very weird dream. There were no clowns in it, but I was in a circus, so I thought it may still have some connection. Every time I look at him, it seems like his little smirk gets wider and wider. Not in the moment, just every time I examine him. I'm gonna take a picture of him and then another a few days later to compare, because it really is messing with my head. I haven't done it yet because I didn't want to really find out this damn thing was changing on me.
This story happened to me when I was around 11, in the early 2000s. My mom's friend gave us a gift on Valentine's Day. It was a wall decoration, a clown sitting on a wooden swing. The clown body was made of cloth and his head was ceramic. In general, he looked cute, so we didn't mind putting it on a wall. In the end, it was a gift and we wouldn't just throw it away. I wasn't afraid of clowns at that point of time. Our apartment was basically a one-room apartment with a separate kitchen. My parents just came together again, so we all slept in one room, which was also a TV room. The clown was right above my bed. Things started to get weird right away. I felt being observed in that room and in the whole apartment. I was uncomfortable. I started to have sleeping problems, a lot of nightmares, and they were violent. I was not a fan of horror movies, and I did not consume scary content. This uncomfortable living continued, and once I woke up at night and immediately felt being watched. My dog was sleeping with me in bed frequently, and I looked at her. She was looking up at the clown. I freaked out. I started to pet her and she completely ignored me. I was poking her and got zero reaction, as if she was hypnotized. At some point she came back, I hugged her and couldn't sleep the rest of the night. I didn't talk to my parents about the clown because it bothered only me, and I thought it's in my head. Next morning I decided I had enough, and before school I talked to the clown. I said that I hate him and I will throw him away if he doesn't stop. That was sort of a power moment. In the back of my mind, I laughed at myself for believing in this bullshit. That day my mom told me that she needs to go to the train station and meet her friend who will stay overnight at our place. My dad was on a business trip, so I had to stay home alone between after school until around 8 p.m. I was, of course, scared, but it was going well while it was daylight. I watched cartoons and some teenage series. The sun started to go down and I thought I needed to turn on the light. I reached out to the lamp and it didn't work. The switch did not work. I decided to turn on the light in a corridor then. Again, the switch didn't work. I thought I would die from my heart racing like crazy. I was scared to go to the kitchen. I was paralyzed by fear. I thought to myself, I will just sit on a sofa, watch TV, and nothing will happen to me. Same second, I see with my peripheral vision that one of the clown's legs sort of moved and slightly bounced against the wall. I told myself I am just too scared and there was nothing wrong, it's my imagination. It's just a toy. What happened next, I have no idea. It's a complete blackout for me. According to my mom, she came back home with her friend and called the doorbell. I had a key inserted, so they couldn't come in. I didn't open. They called on the home phone and I didn't pick up. They went down to ask the concierge if she saw something. The dog was barking like crazy and they could hear it through the 2 entrance doors. There was a light in the room which they could see from the balcony. They say it lasted for about 30 minutes before they called an emergency to break into the apartment, and around 10 minutes for them to arrive and break into. Lastly, I sort of woke up as my dog was poking me with her cold nose in my face and hands. All I remember is that there was light everywhere, the dog was jumping on me and barking, the phone was ringing constantly and people were knocking on the door screaming my name. It was chaos. Another thing, I was lying on a pillow under the blanket as if I went to sleep. When I opened the door, my mom and her friend were hysterically crying. They thought I'm dead or something. I told that I was watching TV and I probably fell asleep so deep that I didn't hear anything. It was around 10 p.m. after we ate and prepared for bed. I slept in a bed with my mom and her friend. I didn't tell them anything about the clown because I was just so stressed about the whole thing. In the morning, her friend told us that she felt very uncomfortable and couldn't fall asleep because she felt being observed. Then she pointed at the clown and said it was creepy. That's when I told them that the last thing I remember is the clown's leg moving before I passed out. I guess we all got horrible chills. Next morning, I went to school. My mom threw away that clown far away from our area. It would have been great if she told me about this beforehand, because when I came from school and didn't see the toy, I started to spin around thinking this thing is standing behind me with a knife. When I realized it's just not there anymore, I sat near the open entrance doors and waited for adults to come back from work.
I was 5 years old. I was sleeping in a double bed with my brother who was 3 at the time. I was having trouble sleeping. I was rolling around. I could hear my parents watching the evening news. It was the 10 o'clock news hour and I kept rolling back and forth and I rolled and there was a clown standing beside my bed. And he was staring down at me and I could hear him breathing. It was more maniacal looking, scary than what you expect clowns to look like. He had red hair, the whole thing. I was up so long that when the furnace would kick on, I could hear the cheap satin rustling on his outfit. And I was so afraid to move, and then I heard the Johnny Carson music from the other room. My parents started turning down the lights. They were going to bed and I was so terrified to scream out to them, I didn't. I snaked my arm underneath the covers and I pinched my brother in the soft part of the arm trying to wake him up. He didn't wake up. He pulled away from me, so I kept opening and closing my eyes, hoping the next time that I opened my eyes, this would be gone, and it just wasn't. And it seemed to me that it went on for hours. And then I think I just really fell asleep out of just pure exhaustion and terror. And then the next morning, I woke up and I told my parents. They, of course, thought I was dreaming, but my brother did have a bruise where I pinched him. And that, I have no explanation. I didn't see it leave. I think from opening and closing my eyes, thinking it would be gone, passed out or fell asleep. It never happened again. It was the one time. It's very vivid and it has stuck with me my entire life. It blinked but there were no other noises. Just breathing, staring, and when the furnace would kick off and on, I could hear the satin on his outfit rustling because the furnace was very close to the bed, Its costume was purple and green and with a red tie. I stared for so long I would know the stupid clown again if I saw it, but I've never seen anything exactly like that.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.